Chief Emeka was the pride of Umage village. A wealthy businessman, he was respected and admired by everyone who knew him. He had a beautiful wife, Adiz, and 3 lovely children. On the surface, Chief Emeka's life seemed perfect. His large estate was the envy of the village, and his successful ventures brought him prestige and influence. But beneath this facade of happiness, there were cracks in the foundation of his seemingly perfect life. Emeka had secrets, dark, dangerous secrets that threatened to unravel everything he had built. Chief Emeka's home was a sprawling mansion surrounded by lush gardens. It was the largest in the village, a symbol of his success. He had worked hard to achieve his wealth, and he loved the power and respect that came with it. Adiz, his wife, was known for her beauty and grace. She was the perfect hostess, always by his side during social events, and their children were well-mannered and bright. However, despite all his outward success, Emeka felt a growing dissatisfaction. His heart was restless, and his eyes began to wander, seeking excitement beyond the walls of his home. It all started innocently enough, at least that's what Chief Emeka told himself. During a business trip to the nearby city of Enugu, he met Ifunanya, a young and stunningly beautiful woman. Ifunanya was everything Adiz was not: spontaneous, adventurous, and irresistibly alluring. What began as casual conversation quickly escalated into flirtation, and before long, Emeka found himself entangled in an affair that would change his life forever. Ifunanya was a vision of beauty, with skin as smooth as silk and eyes that seemed to hold a world of secrets. She was unlike anyone Emeka had ever met. Their first meeting was by chance. She was a waitress at the upscale restaurant where he was dining. But there was an instant chemistry between them, a magnetic pull that neither could ignore. Ifunanya was charming, with a sharp wit and an air of mystery that intrigued Emeka. He found himself drawn to her, unable to resist the thrill of something new and forbidden. It was as if she had cast a spell on him, and he was powerless to break free. What started as a fleeting romance quickly turned into a full-blown affair. Chief Emeka and Ifunanya began meeting in secret, their rendezvous filled with passion and excitement. Emeka was intoxicated by the danger and the thrill of their relationship, and he started to neglect his duties at home and work. His once perfect life began to show signs of strain as he spent more time with Ifunanya and less with his family. The affair gave Emeka a sense of rejuvenation, making him feel young and alive again. He and Ifunanya would meet in the most discreet locations, luxury hotels, secluded beach resorts, and even in the city's outskirts where no one would recognize them. Every moment with her was exhilarating, a sharp contrast to the predictable routine of his life with Adiz. However, with each secret meeting, Emeka found himself sinking deeper into a web of lies. He would make excuses for his absences, telling Adiz that he was caught up in work or attending business meetings. But the more he lied, the more he felt the walls closing in on him. Adiz, ever the dutiful wife, began to notice the changes in her husband. He was more distant, often lost in thought, and his absences became more frequent. At first, she dismissed her suspicions, believing that Emeka was simply under a lot of stress. But soon, the signs became too obvious to ignore. Emeka's once impeccable appearance began to falter, and he became irritable and short-tempered. Adiz's heart ached as she wondered what could be pulling her husband away from her. Adiz's concern grew with each passing day. She tried to talk to Emeka, to understand what was troubling him, but he would brush her off, claiming that everything was fine. The distance between them grew, and Adiz felt a deepening sense of loneliness. She confided in her close friend, Chika, who suggested that Emeka might be having an affair. At first, Adiz refused to believe it. Emeka was a good man, a devoted father and husband. But as the evidence mounted, she couldn't shake the nagging suspicion that something was terribly wrong. She decided to keep a closer eye on her husband, determined to uncover the truth. The day Adi's worst fears were confirmed was the day her world came crashing down. She found a receipt for an expensive piece of jewelry, one she had never received, tucked away in Emeka's jacket pocket. Her hands trembled as she confronted him, demanding to know the truth. Emeka, caught off guard, tried to lie his way out of it, but the evidence was overwhelming. Adi's heart shattered as Emeka admitted to the affair. The man she had loved and trusted had betrayed her in the most painful way possible. Adi's confrontation with Emeka was intense and heartbreaking. Her voice shook with emotion as she held up the receipt, tears streaming down her face. Emeka, realizing there was no way out, confessed to his infidelity. He tried to explain, to justify his actions, but nothing he said could ease the pain he had caused. Adis felt as if her entire life had been a lie. The man she had built a life with, raised children with, was now a stranger to her. The betrayal cut deep, and Adis knew that things would never be the same again. She felt a mix of anger, sadness, and disbelief as she tried to process the enormity of what had just happened. The news of Emeka's affair spread like wildfire through the village. The scandal rocked Umage, and everyone had something to say about it. Emeka's reputation, once untouchable, was now in tatters. The villagers, who had once admired and respected him, now looked at him with disdain. Adis, on the other hand, became the subject of pity and sympathy. People whispered behind her back, and she could feel their eyes on her whenever she stepped out of her home. The pressure became unbearable, and Adis retreated from public life, while Emeka struggled to salvage what was left of his. The scandal had far-reaching consequences. Emeka's business suffered as clients began to distance themselves from him, unwilling to associate with a man whose name was now synonymous with scandal. Adis' children also bore the brunt of the affair, as they were teased and ostracized at school. Adis, once the epitome of grace and dignity, now found herself drowning in a sea of shame and humiliation. She could barely leave the house without hearing whispers and seeing judgmental looks. The once vibrant and social woman became a recluse, spending her days in solitude, trying to figure out how to move forward. Emeka, too, felt the weight of his actions, but the damage had been done. With his life crumbling around him, Emeka became desperate to repair the damage. He pleaded with Adis for forgiveness, promising to end the affair and make amends. But Adis, hurt and humiliated, was not ready to forgive so easily. She needed time to heal, to figure out what she wanted for herself and her children. Emeka's desperation grew as he realized that he might lose everything: his family, his reputation, and his business. He began to lash out, blaming others for his downfall, and his behavior became increasingly erratic. Emeka's desperation led him down a dark path. He turned to alcohol, trying to numb the pain and guilt that consumed him. His once sharp mind became clouded, and he made poor decisions that further endangered his business. The more he tried to fix things, the worse they became. His relationship with Adis deteriorated as he became more volatile, and the love that once bound them together seemed irreparably damaged. Emeka's friends and business partners began to distance themselves, leaving him isolated and alone. He was a man on the brink of losing everything, and the realization of his own folly was devastating. As the days turned into weeks, Adis found herself at a crossroads. She knew that staying with Emeka would mean living in the shadow of his betrayal, but leaving him would mean uprooting her life and that of her children. She sought solace in her faith, spending hours in prayer, asking for guidance. Slowly, she began to regain her strength. Adis realized that she deserved more than a life filled with lies and deceit. She decided to take control of her own destiny, even if it meant making the hardest decision of her life. Adis' inner struggle was intense. She remembered the love she once had for Emeka, the dreams they had built together, and the life they had shared. But she also couldn't forget the pain of his betrayal. She sought advice from elders in the village, who urged her to think carefully about her next steps. Adis knew that she had to do what was best for her and her children. With a heavy heart, she made the decision to leave Emeka. It was not a decision she made lightly, but it was one that she knew was necessary for her own healing and for the well-being of her children. She would start anew, away from the scandal and heartbreak that had consumed her life. When Adis told Emeka of her decision to leave, he was shattered. The reality of losing his wife and children hit him harder than anything else. For the first time, he truly understood the magnitude of his actions. He begged Adis to stay, promising to change, to be the man she deserved. But Adis had made up her mind. She told him that while she would always care for him as the father of her children, she could no longer be his wife. Emeka was left to face the consequences of his actions alone, the weight of his choices bearing down on him like never before. The confrontation between Emeka and Adis was heartbreaking. Emeka was on his knees, tears streaming down his face as he pleaded with her to reconsider. But Adis' resolve was firm. She had given him chances before, but this time, she knew that she had to put herself first. She gently explained to him that love alone was not enough to sustain a marriage. Trust, respect, and loyalty were just as important, and those had been shattered beyond repair. Emeka watched as Adis packed her things, feeling utterly powerless to stop her. The realization that he had lost everything he once held dear was a crushing blow. Adis' departure from the family home was a moment of profound sadness. The children, confused and heartbroken, clung to their mother, not fully understanding why their family was being torn apart. Emeka stood in the doorway, watching as the woman he had once taken for granted walked out of his life. As Adis and the children drove away, Emeka felt an overwhelming sense of loss. He had gambled with his happiness, and in the end, he had lost everything. The house, once filled with laughter and love, was now empty and silent, a stark reminder of the price of his infidelity. The day Adis left was one of the hardest days of Emeka's life. He watched as his children, with tears in their eyes, said goodbye to the only home they had ever known. Adis' face was stoic, but inside, she was grieving the loss of the life she had once cherished. She knew that this was the right decision for her and her children, but that didn't make it any less painful. As they drove away, the weight of the finality hit Emeka like a ton of bricks. The realization that he had destroyed his family for a fleeting affair was more than he could bear. The once lively and warm home now felt like a prison, a constant reminder of the love and life he had squandered. After leaving Emeka, Adis started a new life with her children in a neighboring town. It wasn't easy, but she was determined to build a better future for them. She found a modest home and started working to support her family. The transition was difficult for the children, who missed their father and their old life, but Adis was steadfast in her decision. She knew that the path she had chosen was the right one, and she began to rediscover her own strength and independence. Adis' new life was a stark contrast to the one she had left behind. Gone were the luxuries and comforts of her former home, but in their place was a newfound sense of freedom and self-reliance. Adis found work as a teacher, a job that she had always dreamed of but never pursued while married to Emeka. The work was fulfilling, and she found joy in helping her students learn and grow. The children, though initially resistant, began to adjust to their new surroundings, making new friends and slowly healing from the trauma of their parents' separation. Adis focused on creating a stable and loving environment for them, determined to give them the best life she could. Back in Umage, Emeka's life continued to unravel. Without his family, his home felt empty and lifeless. The once vibrant and bustling mansion was now filled with silence, a stark reminder of the life that had slipped through his fingers. Emeka's business continued to suffer as word of his affair spread further, leading to a loss of clients and the erosion of trust among his partners. The village that once held him in high regard now viewed him with pity and disdain. The isolation was unbearable, and Emeka was left to reflect on the choices that had led him to this desolate point in his life. Emeka's days became a monotonous routine of work and solitude. He spent his evenings wandering through the empty halls of his mansion, each room a painful reminder of the happiness that once filled his life. The laughter of his children, the warmth of Adi's presence, all were now distant memories. He tried to immerse himself in his work, but without the support of his family, even his passion for business began to fade. The emptiness he felt was profound, and no amount of wealth or success could fill the void left by his family's departure. Emeka's health began to deteriorate as well, the stress and guilt taking a toll on his body and mind. He was a man who had everything, but now he was left with nothing but regret. As time passed, Adis began to thrive in her new life. She had become a respected member of her community, known for her kindness, strength, and wisdom. Her children were flourishing in their new environment, and Adis found joy in the simple pleasures of life. She had grown from the experience, becoming more independent and self-assured. The pain of the past had not disappeared, but it no longer defined her. Adis had found peace, and with it came a sense of fulfillment that she had never known before. Adis' journey of healing was not without its challenges, but she faced each one with courage and determination. She had built a new network of friends and supporters, people who admired her resilience and respected her decisions. Her work as a teacher brought her immense satisfaction, and she poured her heart into helping her students succeed. Adis also began to engage in community projects, using her experience to help other women who were going through difficult times. She had become a role model, not just for her children, but for many in her community. The transformation was remarkable. Adis had turned her pain into strength, and her past no longer held her back. Instead, it had become a source of inspiration for her to continue growing and helping others. As Emeka's life continued to spiral downward, he realized that the only way to find peace was to seek forgiveness. He reached out to Adis, not in an attempt to win her back, but to make amends for the pain he had caused. Emeka understood that he had lost her forever, but he hoped that by acknowledging his mistakes and seeking forgiveness, he could begin to rebuild his life, even if only for his own peace of mind. Adis, in her wisdom, listened to Emeka's apology with an open heart, recognizing the sincerity in his words. Emeka's decision to seek forgiveness was a difficult one. He had to confront the enormity of his actions and the pain he had inflicted on the people he loved the most. When he finally mustered the courage to reach out to Adis, it was with humility and a deep sense of regret. He met her in a quiet place, away from the prying eyes of the village, and poured out his heart. He admitted to his faults, his arrogance, and his selfishness. Emeka did not expect Adis to forgive him, but he needed to take responsibility for his actions. Adis, who had come a long way in her own journey of healing, accepted his apology. She told Emeka that while she could never forget what he had done, she appreciated his efforts to make amends. It was a moment of closure for both of them, allowing Emeka to begin the long process of rebuilding his life, and for Adis, it was a final step in letting go of the past. With her past family behind her, Adis embraced the future with hope and optimism. She continued to grow in her new community, finding love and companionship in unexpected places. Adis had learned that life could be unpredictable, but she had also discovered her own strength and resilience. She was ready to face whatever challenges came her way, knowing that she had the inner resources to overcome them. The journey had been long and painful, but Adis had emerged stronger, wiser, and more at peace with herself than ever before. Adis' new chapter in life was filled with joy and fulfillment. She became more involved in community activities, and her work as a teacher flourished. Her children continued to grow and excel, supported by the love and stability that Adis provided. Over time, Adis found love again, but this time it was different, built on mutual respect, trust, and understanding. The relationship was slow to develop, as Adis was careful not to repeat the mistakes of the past. But eventually, she found happiness with someone who truly valued her for who she was. This new relationship brought her a sense of completeness, and Addis knew that she had finally found her place in the world. Emeka, though forever changed by his mistakes, began to find a new purpose in life. He focused on rebuilding his business, not for the sake of wealth, but to restore his integrity and self-respect. He also started to give back to the community, using his resources to help those in need. Emeka knew that he could never undo the past, but he was determined to learn from it and become a better man. His journey was one of redemption, not only in the eyes of others but within himself. He had lost everything that mattered, but in doing so, he had gained a deeper understanding of life, love, and the importance of humility. Emeka's path to redemption was long and arduous. He faced many setbacks and challenges, but he was determined to keep moving forward. He began to reconnect with his children, slowly rebuilding the trust that had been shattered. It wasn't easy, but with time and patience, he started to mend his relationship with them. Emeka also became more involved in charitable work, helping to fund educational programs and support for single mothers in the village. His efforts were not about seeking redemption in the eyes of others, but rather about making amends in a way that was meaningful and sincere. Though he would always carry the burden of his past actions, Emeka found solace in the knowledge that he was working towards becoming a better person, one day at a time. The events surrounding Emeka and Addis' story became a cautionary tale in Umage village. People spoke of it often, not with malice, but with a sense of reflection. The village had learned from the experience, understanding the importance of loyalty, trust, and the consequences of one's actions. The story of Emeka and Addis was shared among the villagers, serving as a reminder of the fragility of relationships and the need to cherish and nurture them. While some viewed Emeka's downfall with sympathy, others saw it as a necessary lesson. Addis, on the other hand, was admired for her strength and resilience, becoming a symbol of empowerment for many women in the village. The story had left a lasting impact on Umage, changing the way people thought about family, love, and the values that held their community together. The village elders often used Emeka and Addis' story during gatherings to teach the younger generation about the importance of making wise decisions in life. The story also prompted more open discussions about marriage, fidelity, and the roles of men and women in society. The women of Umage found strength in Addis' journey, and many began to assert themselves more confidently within their own families. The men, too, learned from Emeka's mistakes, realizing that power and wealth meant nothing without the love and respect of one's family. The village became more close-knit, with a stronger emphasis on mutual support and understanding. The tale of the affair that cost him everything became an integral part of Umage's cultural fabric, influencing the community for generations to come. Years later, Addis' story continued to inspire many in and beyond Umage village. She had built a legacy not just through her personal strength but also through her contributions to the community. Addis started a foundation to support women and children who were facing similar challenges to those she had overcome. Her foundation provided education, resources, and a safe space for women to find their footing and rebuild their lives. Addis' impact extended far beyond her own life, as she became a beacon of hope and empowerment for countless others. Addis' foundation grew steadily, attracting support from various corners of society. She partnered with local businesses, governments, and international organizations to expand the reach of her programs. The foundation offered scholarships for young girls, vocational training for women, and counseling services for families in need. Addis was often invited to speak at conferences and community events, where she shared her story and the lessons she had learned. She became a mentor to many, guiding others through their own struggles and helping them to find the strength within themselves. Through her work, Addis ensured that her legacy would live on, transforming the lives of those who needed it most. Emeka spent the rest of his life quietly rebuilding his reputation and making amends for his past mistakes. Though he never regained the power and prestige he once had, Emeka found peace in his new, more humble life. He continued to work for the betterment of the community, supporting various charitable causes and using his experience to mentor young men about the importance of integrity and humility. Emeka's journey was one of quiet redemption, and though it was a path filled with challenges, he walked it with a sense of purpose. He had learned to find contentment in the simple things, and his life, though different from what he had once envisioned, was fulfilling in its own way. In his later years, Emeka became a respected figure in the village once again, not for his wealth or status, but for his wisdom and humility. He often reflected on his life's journey, sharing his story with those who sought his counsel. Emeka was particularly focused on mentoring young men, helping them avoid the pitfalls that had once ensnared him. His relationship with his children, though never fully mended, had improved, and they respected the changes they saw in their father. Emeka's redemption was not about erasing the past but about accepting it and doing better in the future. He spent his final years content, having made peace with the choices he had made and the lessons he had learned. The story of Emeka and Adiz became a part of Umage's cultural heritage, passed down from generation to generation. It was told not just as a tale of betrayal and loss but as a powerful lesson about the choices we make and the values that truly matter. The story served as a reminder that love, respect, and integrity are the foundations of a strong family and community. Emeka's downfall and Adiz's rise from the ashes became symbolic of the resilience of the human spirit and the importance of staying true to oneself. The villagers of Umage continue to share the story with their children and grandchildren, ensuring that the lessons of Emeka and Adiz's lives were never forgotten. Over time, the story took on a life of its own, with new generations adding their own interpretations and insights. The tale became a part of the village's identity, shaping the values and traditions that were passed down. As Umage grew and changed, the story of the affair that cost him everything remained a constant, a timeless reminder of the power of choices and the enduring strength of the human spirit. I hope you enjoyed and learned something from this story. Please kindly like the video, comment your thoughts and please subscribe for more enchanting tales. Thank you.